Now, authorities in the United States have said that the very last British resident held at Guantanamo Bay is to be released and returned to the UK. Shaker Aamer is his name. He's been in a military prison in Cuba since 2002, never charged, never stood trial. And both the US Presidents George W. Bush and Barack Obama have both previously cleared him for release. He was originally arrested in Afghanistan on suspicion of working for al-Qaeda. He says he was a charity worker. Let's talk to Clive Stafford-Smith, who's Shaker Aamer's lawyer. First of all, Clive, he's not coming home straight away, right?
Unfortunately not. Congress was only notified yesterday, and there's a 30-day waiting period, so probably he can't come home until mid-October at the earliest.
What reasons were you given for his continued detention, even though both George W. and Barack Obama, indeed David Cameron, the UK Prime Minister, saying he can come back here, and they'd said we'd be happy to see him go? What reasons were you given for him not being released several years ago?
Well, the short answer is we weren't given any reason. Unfortunately, I think we know why, and it's because Shaker was a witness to an awful lot of bad things. He was a witness to a lot of torture and abuse of other people, and some really important stories, including what led in a big way to the Iraq War. So they don't want him to come out because it's going to be embarrassing, but I'm glad to say I think it's finally going to happen.
What did you have to do in the end? Because I think one of the stumbling blocks was the fact that Congress, US Congress, said if you're responsible for letting this man go, you as US Defence Secretary, you could be liable for prosecution if he does anything wrong in the future.
Yes, this was one of the sort of ludicrous political footballs that was being kicked around in Congress. And it's still going on, I'm afraid. The reason you know about Shaker's potential release is because it was leaked by a Republican congressman today to the Washington Post. And they're doing that because they want to try to scare the world and say, oh, my goodness, what are we doing releasing this desperately dangerous person? But of course, Shaker isn't dangerous. He's never done anything. He's not a terrorist. He's never been tried. He's been cleared, as you say. And it's all this nonsense that goes on in the political sphere, where they try to scare people about folk like Shaker just because he's a Muslim man with a beard, and it's total drivel.
But it is a little odd, isn't it? It must be in some people's minds that a Saudi Arabian man who's married to a British woman who has the right to stay in Britain decides to take his wife and his children off to Afghanistan so that he can do some charity work.
Well, I mean, of course, hindsight is a wonderful, wonderful thing, and we all now know what happened after 9/11. Shaker went there just before 9/11, and none of this was real. None of this was what anyone was expecting. And what he wanted to do, along with a number of other people like Mozambique, was he wanted to help people. He was setting up a school for both boys and girls in Afghanistan. And let's face it, all the prejudices people have that conservative Muslims won't let girls and boys both get educated together. That was exactly the opposite of what Shaker was trying to do. So I think if people just listened to the truth, they wouldn't have those prejudices.
When will Guantanamo Bay be shut? Because it's what? Now coming up to the end of Barack Obama's second term, and he said it would be the first thing he was going to do when he became president. When do you think it will close?
Well, I don't know if it's going to be before we finish waiting for Godot. We'll find out. I mean, certainly President Obama is insistent now that he's going to close it. And let's face it, he should, both for the sake of the 112 prisoners left and for the sake of America's reputation in the world. But there's a lot of opposition, and that opposition comes from mainly the Republicans. And let's face it, people like some of the presidential candidates, Donald Trump, who thinks we should put a whole lot more people in Guantanamo. I hope that's not the future that we have.
And we appreciate you coming on to talk about this, to talk about that matter. That's Clive Stafford-Smith, Shaker Aamer's lawyer.
Thank you.
Good.